intuitive thing is to go, okay, now how do I update my list with that?
Yep.
Right? And that is the next bit that we're going to get to. So the next, as I say, the logical step is to return the list of birds, right? So all we're going to do is just create a couple of spans, right? Actually, let me take a look at the notable birds list now, because that's where we're at. We're at here. We've got the data, we've got the click, we've basically took the notable React script on the right-hand side and just converted this entire lot into Astro. And really, the one thing that we needed, right, was the fetch request. We just need to meet the fetch data, right? Nothing else. Okay. And just so for those who just came into the conversation, we're placing this actual logic located within the front matter of Astro. And using XElement, we've just generated simple button elements, right? And applied a simple on-click event listener using probably the simplest implementation you'll ever see of it. And behind the app method, using the click, and then we're just dropping the fetch birds in. And this is the exact same for every single button that is on the screen. And every single one of these buttons are now carrying out their own independent fetch request through the browser without the use of a third-party framework. Right? Now, all good, all good. And then, what else are we doing now? Oh yeah, we're doing the list. So let's take a wee look at the list. Notable birds list. And we have... Right, okay, so we've got a bunch of filters kicking about, right? Where we're passing the props in, we're filtering it out, right?
Right, so the essential logic behind this page is that every time you report a rare or unusual bird, it needs to first be reviewed. So the response object is going to have a reviewed true or false Boolean. And the response object is going to have a valid true or false Boolean. So it needs to be reviewed first. Once it is reviewed, then valid will potentially get updated to true. Valid is always false if it's not yet reviewed. So I am keeping track here of two separate lists of birds, the ones that have not yet been reviewed at all, and then the ones that have been reviewed and valid. Those are the ones I print to the screen. But I really do have to keep track of the different combinations there. And in terms of that little list I'm showing, I don't want to duplicate birds. I just want a set, not a list. So this is where some of that logic comes in as well, because 8 people might have seen this unusual flamingo, but in my list, I only want that to show up once. It's down in the detailed observations. I'll show everything. So that's what's all going on in here.
Right, okay. Perfect. And I see that there, right? Birds awaiting review. Here's our list, not reviewed, right? That's what we were looking for, one. And then we got a review for our second one, right? Okay, because we got our data, we could just map each item as a single list item, and then we could just append it to this parent list here, right, on the DOM. And I think that would be easy. So pretty much this is a very similar implementation to what we got here. So let's take this static. And what static? We'll take it. Right, and we'll come back to the details, that the detailed observation post in a second, right? Let's go down to this line here, copy this, and go to our notable lists here, and change things about. So what we've got here is a JSX list, right, which is basically going around, and this is the logic, right, that we're going to basically try and encapsulate within the actual XElement itself. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this unordered list out of it, because it's literally just, we just have a space for an unordered list, right? And then we're just filling that unordered list up, right? Let me get rid of these styles. Is it list style type? These all one word? Aye, list style type like that. Then padding left. Right, and then birds length not review, we get rid of you. And this conditional that's kicking about. And this. Right, so we've got you, and this is going to be filled in with, and what we're going to do, we're going to give this an ID. Right, so just because I think another thing is, JavaScript IDs are globals. So if you call, you could reference something using its global ID namespace as well. So we're just going to call this and go this a waiting list, right? And do you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to go recently reviewed. You go up here, you disappear, and received list. Word of caution to anybody that ever asks me to do anything, I will look for the easiest way to do it first. And that is, so this is what we've got, right? So this is where we're going to generate the list. Right, we're going to need your filters over as well, I believe. And let's gather everything to... Don't need that. We do need this for loop because this is what splits up your lists, and this is the filters here, right? And we've got your arrays. Happy days. All right, and yeah, so in here, sorry, it's a wee bit, just try to figure out what life is like. We've got your notable birds, right? And well, actually, no, we don't need that. We've got the data here, right? So we don't need that. We don't need the console log for the time being. We've got a list of pending notable birds. We've got our list of non-pending notable birds. So we've got our filter for the not reviewed and the reviewed but not valid, and then we've got our arrays to check over the two of them. Okay. Like I said, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to touch the logic because the logic works. But what I am going to do is I am going to put this, what we've just pasted in, right, into its own little function, right? So I am, because effectively this is going to get called to filter the list of birds out, right? And so we're just going to go const filter birds out, and then we've got an async function, and this is going to return these two arrays for us. Okay, so sorry, in here and here, right? And we're going to go return list of pending birds and list of notable valid birds, right? And so that's this epically concise filter, right? Going off here, right? And that looks good. Let's just create a wee space in here, right? We need to pass in the data set in here, sorry. Right, so because it needs to filter something. So this props no, I'll just call this props, right? In terms of what we're doing, we are here. We've just gathered that the filter functions, and this is what we've done, right? So yeah, as filterBird, right? Okay, OBS review. So, and in here, I am just going to change these divs, these unordered lists, into spans. Yep. Right. Because with these spans, we're just literally using these as placeholders, as text placeholders, and the JavaScript's going to fill them in. Because we have the space already created on the DOM, it's a lot easier for it. There's no recreation of DOM nodes that is needed. JS list review, sorry. So one's valid and one isn't it? And right, there we go, there we go. Right, let's get this going. Straight at the very top. God, this file's getting a wee bit too long in the teeth. In the tooth, sorry. We get, right, okay. So we have our filtered birds list like we've just copied over, right? Now this filtered birds list should work because the data is getting filtered through properly. And from the bottom here, as we say, we're just returning two arrays out this function, right? We're then passing it into our own self-made literals, okay? And that's that UI thing that we were doing earlier, but this time we just encapsulated it within the scope of the actual XElement function. Now, as you can see, the children's made up of these little small lists, and this is the big parent one, so that goes in, etc. Right? And the way that we generate these is that we map over each filter bird list with a literal, and then we basically produce it, pop it into the inner HTML. We're clearing the inner HTML every time that we click it, and then we are just filling up the list with these, right? So I'll call these list 1 and list 2. Let me just call back down to these spans and just rename them properly. So list 2 and list 1. And back up into here, and wherever we have list, we're just going to go JS list 1. Oh, I really didn't like this. Yep, thought so.
Oh,
And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. You have DOM created elements and nodes and data being populated and brought through an XElement without any client-side JavaScript framework, tool, utility, renderer. And now you're probably thinking, it's like, well, what about this one wee bit here? Just to finish it off, we're now going to report this because this here represented the global scope, didn't it? This one little block up here, right? Everything else is pretty funky, you know. It's like these are all encapsulated within itself. Every element is encapsulated in its own behavior. So this here's an element, that there's an element. These two do not work with each other, but you know what? They can do, right? But let's fill this bit up and then we'll call it a day there, right? Because that just shows that every time we are changing, because remember, every time you're clicking the button, we're updating the location here, right?
Yep.
Now, we could also do one thing more, right, and go store.location equals this as well. So we're also setting the store.location when we're setting the location itself. Very simple, very easy, right? And then all we've got to do is get down into here, and literally we're just telling XElement to do something simple, and we're just going to import the text, right? What do you call it? Show location, and yeah. And then here we're going to go element, store. Can I just say these names are not particularly fussy. You can call them what you like, but always respect what goes into what position and what comes out. And then here we're just going to go element dot text content equals store dot location. Sorry. Showing birds. Let me just. Yeah, that will do, right? Default context dot default location. I don't know where that's coming from because we don't have a default location, but we've just got a location, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to close this in. Sorry, my mind's gone blank now. Store.location, right? But the thing is, right, it's like if store.location is equal to nil, right, we need to populate it with something, right? Because that's what's the problem is. There's no store location, there's no default location, right? So if store location is
I was thinking, what if we just say showing birds in and then the store dot location? What would happen in that? How does XElement handle if there is no store location? Is it like JSX where it would just show nothing for the
yep,
store
we'll
location,
just
but it would show
yep,
the rest of the hard-coded text?
yep. But the problem is now, right, is because this only fires once. You know, it's like once it's fired, right? It's a simple case of how do we constantly, do this, right? So it's like this should be, yeah. So current location, sorry, what was the message? Current birds at location.
Something like that. Showing birds in location, something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right.
Sure.
So albeit these are changing, right? This is
Right, because that's because your do is basically like just on page load only once.
yep,
So we need
yep,
a different.
right.
Do we have
So
another method that would update?
we do, right? So there is one thing that we can do, right? It's like because this is how I would do it. Legit. I'll make up my own elements, right? And then I'll just go ID title location. In here, we're just going to go title location equals location. Right?
Ah,
Happy
okay.
days. I could get rid of this wee line up here, right? So all I'm really doing is I'm just basically I'll call the title location, and every time we click it, we're just going to update the location, right? That's how I would have done it, right? So bird location 0, we're going to go this Ontario,
Oh yeah.
yes,
Yep.
etc. Right? That's how I would have done it, and we got all our birds coming down as well.
Perfect.
Live data fetch requests, right? And then so let me just tart this up a wee bit. Yep, and
Yep.
then that goes there, right? And then we hit refresh. We've got a little colon. We click there. We've got that, right? But because I don't want the city names, I want the actual names, right? We've got the names inside the buttons, so I could go this dot text content, right?
Oh, wow.
See, life when you know JavaScript and JavaScript in itself is what you need. I want you to be only stuck thinking about JavaScript logic. I don't want you to be stuck trying to think about what puts or how do I use effect or do I use memo here or do I need I use 3 fiber or something like that. You don't need these things. You just need to
Right,
if you can use JavaScript,
right, because
you
I
can.
was needing to set and hold state for those location codes because I needed those
Hmm.
very specific codes to put into my fetch for the
Yes.
API. So it was easiest for me to say, okay, like as a check, I'm mirroring back. This is the location code I did the fetch at. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't have to do that here.
No, and this is a thing. So it's like, in effect, our wee app that we've just created here, because effectively this is like, as an application is, a very skewed term, to say the least. But nonetheless, we have the your app here, right? We're still waiting for hydration to kick in. That's why when we're clicking the buttons, nothing's happening, right? Until we eventually get to some sort of hydration,
Yeah,
right?
and
Let's
sometimes I
restart,
do have to just
refresh the page.
refresh one more time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, it's like, oh, there we go.
Yep.
There we go. Right? We've got life, right?
Yep.
And this is just a matter of hydration. This is just the nature of, this being a JavaScript application, right? Astro creating a HTML string of it, and then that coming down the wire, and then the HTML getting reactivated by the JavaScript, right? That's a step in a process. With xBird, there is no step in process. You're literally just doing it straight away. There is nothing else to stop you from rendering it,
Wow.
from breaking it, sorry. And there you go. In effect, the exact same thing.